Okay, hi guys, welcome again. So now I'm going to be looking at chapter 11. So the first thing that we're going to do in this session is determine the difference between listening and hearing, because there's a difference between the two. Hearing is a natural sense that allows you to detect sound. That's hearing. Listening, on the other end, is when you make an effort to pay attention to what someone is saying to you. Two different types of listening, right? There's many of them, and we will talk about the few that are mentioned in your book. But the first one that we have is discriminative listening, where you look past the words that are coming out of this person who's in front of you. You look past the words to hear and detect the underlying message, or what the person is really saying. You look past what the person is saying and focus on their non-verbal cues, focus on their body language, their tone. So you're not taking the words, you're taking what you are saying and how the person in front of you is acting, and formulating a message out of that. And the second type of listening is comprehensive listening. To be a comprehensive listener, you need to have good language skills, and you need to have good vocabulary skills. If you do not have good language and good vocabulary skills, then it's difficult for you to understand what the person, and you also need to understand that language in which the message is being communicated in fully, right? Because sometimes you understand the language, but then not comprehensively. So you need to be well vested in the language, the terminology. So I'll give you an example. I could get a doctor or a physiologist to come and explain certain concepts to me, but because of the jargon that they are aware of, I can hear what they're saying, but I may not comprehend it because I'm not familiar with the vocabulary and the language that they're using. And then we get to informational listening, which refers to all situations where you learn something when someone is talking to you. Whenever you are learning something, whenever you're getting some sort of information that is beneficial to you one way or another, you're engaging in informational listening. And we get to critical listening, where you listen to evaluate and analyze the information that you're receiving from the speaker. An example of this is what doctors do when you visit the doctor's rooms. They're listening critically to really understand what your condition is, so that they can diagnose you properly and they can give you the right medication, right? So there's nothing worse than going to a doctor and telling them that, listen, I'm suffering from A, B, C, and D, and then they give you medication for X, Y, Z. So you need to really understand, evaluate, and analyze what the person is saying with the information that you are receiving, so that you can take appropriate action moving forward. And then you've got empathetic listening, which is the most intense type of listening, where with this type of listening you are putting yourself in the shoes of the speaker. This usually happens when say someone has lost a loved one and they're really just venting to you, or they're telling you how they're feeling about this thing, and you empathize with this person. You are intensely involved, and you're sharing their emotions with them, right? It's also used during counseling sessions, job interviews, disciplinary interviews, and even team building opportunities, where you put yourself in the perspective, in the shoes of the person who is speaking, to really get their point of view, to really understand what they're feeling, what's going through them, right? That's empathetic listening. And then the next one is passive listening, which requires no response. It requires no verbal or non-verbal response. You're literally just listening, and that's it. You don't have to say anything, you don't have to respond, you're just hearing the information that is coming to you. Usually this type of listening occurs when we listen to music or when we listen to the radio, right? You don't say, I agree with you, when someone is speaking to you over the radio, or when you're hearing a song, or when you're listening to a song, right? And then we move on to pleasurable listening, which can easily be confused with passive listening. So pleasurable listening is listening for social enjoyment. It usually takes place at social gatherings, while you're watching TV, while you're listening to music, while you're watching a movie, or some other type of entertainment. It's for self-pleasure. You're listening to enjoy yourself, right? And we engage in this all the time. And then you get the next one, which is rapport or interactive listening, where you are expected to react verbally or non-verbally after you have heard what has been said to you. A response is expected from you. Okay, so for an example of this type of listening is when I say something and then I ask, do you agree with this, or what are your thoughts on this particular subject matter, and then you then give your thoughts on that subject matter as you had been asked by the speaker. The next type of listening is selective listening. Selective listening is partial listening, where you are listening but not listening at the same time. So listeners listen, yes, they hear what you're saying, but beyond them hearing what they're saying, they then take that information and interpret it in their own ways, so that when they respond, it comes out differently as to what the speaker is actually saying. So you make up your own opinions, you may make up your own ideas before the person is even done talking. You haven't taken time to really hear everything that they have to say. While they're in the process of explaining themselves, you've already come up with conclusions as to what they're going to say. And by the time you respond, you're responding to the wrong thing, or you're responding incorrectly. That's partial listening. This type of listening usually occurs when you are in an intense argument with someone and you really just want to get your point across, and you're not really taking time to listen to what the other person is saying to you. Okay, right, so those are different types of listening. So now we are going to move on to talk about barriers to listening. The first one would be hearing problems, right? If you've got a hearing problem, obviously that's going to affect your ability to understand or listen, right? This can be sorted out medically. So it's a medical condition that one has, and it can be fixed or not, right? The second one is information overload, where you have to attend to too much information being given to you at the same time, and it takes time for you to organize that information, or your brain just lapses, it gets tired, and you just stop listening even though you are hearing what the person is saying. Get things like noise or distractions within the environment. So as I'm speaking to you right now, maybe there may be a child who's shouting or crying in the background. That can be destructive, and it can affect your listening process. The other one is rapid thought, where you've got so many other things happening in your brain while the person is talking that it actually shuts down the listening process. You're not hearing, you're not listening. Even though you can hear that there's stimuli coming from the outside, you're actually not processing it or actively listening to what the person is saying because of the thoughts that are running through your head. And then we will talk about strategies to improve listening skills. So how do you improve your listening skills? Firstly, listen to the whole message. Wait and listen to the whole message. Do not jump in and try to, no, I've got an objection, or before you say that, let me say this. No, give the person an opportunity to speak. And when they're done, say what you have to say. Don't cut them. Right.
And when they're speaking, do not say, okay, this is what I'm going to say, and this is how I'm going to, conjure that. No. Listen to the whole message so that you've got a full perspective of what is being said and you understand, and when you respond, you then respond appropriately.
This will take us back to what I said earlier, in that sometimes when someone is speaking, they will say something with their mouth, but then their body is telling you something completely different. So you need to take note of that. Give the speaker your undivided attention.
Do not do not fall asleep when someone is speaking to you. Do not play on your phone when someone is speaking to you. Do not look outside the window when someone is speaking to you.
Give the person your full attention because it's respectful. You make them feel important. Okay? Stay open-minded. That's easy. Be willing to learn new information. Pause and be silent. involve yourself mentally in what the speaker is saying. This is actually an extreme sport. It can be difficult to really engage yourself mentally because naturally there's a lot of things that are happening in our heads. And then verbal signs of active listening. So how do you see that this person is really listening to me and they hear me, they're effectively listening to me? One, the person who's listening to you would ask for clarification. Ask questions, open-ended questions, to enable the speaker to clarify things that you may not have understood. Non-verbal signs of active listening. Smile. But this is also depending on the type of message that you are receiving, because if someone is telling you that they're not feeling well or they're not doing well in class, you can't just be smiling, because it's like, what is wrong with you? You know what I'm saying? So just gauge the situation. If it's a positive circumstance that requires you to smile, then go ahead and do so, right? Make eye contact. I've spoken about this, so I'm not going to dwell much on this. Your posture, right? So if you're sitting like this and someone is talking to you, that's a very negative thing. It shows lack of interest. It's disrespectful, like I said earlier. So really engage with the person through your body language. Show them that you are interested in what they're saying and you are hearing them. Looking at the clock, packing your bags, darting your fingers, playing on your phone. Such behaviors distract the speaker. Just again, it's disrespectful, it's very disruptive, so just take time to sit still, listen to what the person is saying. When they're done, then you can do whatever it is that you need to do. When you are dealing with people from different cultures, keep a positive and open mind. It's not just about you. You are not always right. Even if you are right, it doesn't necessarily mean that the other person is wrong. Be respectful of different ways of communication, right? Just because it's okay for you to look at another person in the eye in your culture, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's wrong to not look at another person in the eye in a different culture. So be respectful, okay? Tolerate mistakes and differences, right? People are different and it's okay. To sum up this chapter, there is a list of do's and don'ts when listening. These are in your slides and they're also in your book. Please go look at them, go read them, and be one with those do's and don'ts of listening, and practice them even when you're at home listening. I will see you guys in the next chapter